oil great in his last month in the White House. He wanted to close the deal with the Turkmenistan pipeline. This is a pipeline that would have run Russian Arctic energy into India, but the pipeline had to run through Pakistan and Afghanistan in order to reach India. So for that reason, Trump sent Pompeo to lay down in bed with the Taliban and freed Abdul, the leader of the Taliban, with 5,000 of his soldiers, and to give him rule over Afghanistan. So for the love of oil, Trump was willing to lay down with the Taliban. And because of it, the Taliban gained rule over Afghan by overthrowing the American coalition Afghan government out of power with the okay approval of the State Secretary Pompeo. They displaced the American coalition Afghan government, and Trump laid down in bed with Abdul to give Abdul and promise Abdul rule over Afghanistan. And Trump did this in his last month in office as president of the United States. He was willing to wheel and deal for the love of oil, because you got to understand, this pipeline, Exxon and Chevron wanted to control the rights of the gas, the natural gas that will flow through these pipelines. So as far as American oil sector, Exxon and Chevron wanted to control the flow of Russian Arctic energy that would have flowed through this Turkmenistan pipeline that would have had to pass through Pakistan and Afghanistan in order to reach India. And so Trump, for the love of money, for the love of his lobbyists and Exxon and Chevron, was willing to lay down with the Taliban and promise Abdul rule over Afghanistan. Abdul is the leader of the Taliban. And for y'all that remember, the Taliban were the ones that were colluding with Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden and al-Zawahiri, to attack us on 9/11. And so when Biden won in 2020, he was left with the fiasco of Pompeo and Trump. Pompeo was Trump's state secretary. So Biden inherited the mess that Trump left in his wake when he left the Oval Office. By the time Biden was sworn into office, already Abdul surrounded Kabul and took the whole territory of Afghan. So it was already too late for Biden to save the American coalition government, because already Trump, during his term, he made sure that Abdul got freed from prison with 5,000 of the Taliban soldiers, and they started ransacking with the approval of Pompeo, taking over the whole of the Afghan government. And Trump just wanted the pipeline to not be terrorized by the Taliban. So that was his motivation to release and give rule of Abdul, the leader of the Taliban, and give him back Afghan to rule. So Trump did it because of his oligarchs in Exxon and Chevron. They wanted to control the gas that flowed through those pipelines that would have been feeding energy into India. India has 1.1 billion plus Indian population, but they also wanted to, with the same pipeline, feed energy into China, Exxon and Chevron. So it is lucrative for Trump's lobbyist interests to have secured that pipeline. And so Trump did it by desecrating the legacies and the victims of 9/11, by laying down with the Taliban for the love of oil, for his snake oil remedies. And when Biden was sworn in 2020 to the Oval Office, the CIA found out that al-Zawahiri snuck back into Afghanistan and was seeking refuge and living in a close, high-ranking Taliban leader's house. And the Biden administration and the CIA were able to find al-Zawahiri and assassinated him with a shredder missile. It was a missile that had blades that when it hit him, it shredded his body. But that's to show you that Al-Qaeda and the Taliban are tied at the hips. And Trump was willing to play and lay down and be submissive to Abdul and the Taliban, and thereby indirectly give refuge to Al-Qaeda and the leadership of Al-Qaeda. Because al-Zawahiri was pulled right back into Afghanistan because of Trump's laying down with Abdul and the Taliban. Al-Zawahiri was right back in there in Afghanistan. And if it wasn't for Biden, he would have been plotting. Al-Qaeda would have been plotting with the Taliban for future attacks, terrorist attacks on America. So for the love of oil, for Trump to lay down with Abdul and wheel and deal with the Taliban, just because in his last month in the Oval Office, Trump wanted to secure the deal to make sure that the Taliban doesn't terrorize this lucrative gas pipeline that would have been making Exxon and Chevron billions of dollars. So Trump, the only way he knew how to close the deal is to free the Taliban out of prison and give them rule of Afghanistan and subvert the American-led Afghan coalition government. Pompeo threw the Afghan coalition government of Afghanistan underneath the bus just to roll out the red carpet for Abdul. And then Trump blames Biden for the fiasco of Afghanistan. When Biden was sworn into office, the Taliban took all the provinces. By the time that Biden was sworn into the White House, the only province that needed to be taken by the Taliban was Kabul. And so Trump set it in motion for the Afghan government to be taken over by Abdul and the Taliban leaders. He gave them the rule of Afghan government on a silver platter. In other words, Trump desecrated. As far as I'm concerned, Trump pissed and shitted in the eternal fountains of the victims of 9/11. That for the love of oil, he was willing to lay down with the Taliban and indirectly give refuge to Al-Qaeda. You got to remember, al-Zawahiri was the leader of Al-Qaeda right before he got assassinated in Afghanistan. But because of the vacuum that Trump created, al-Zawahiri was given refuge by the Taliban and Abdul to move right back into Afghanistan and to start training Al-Qaeda operatives. And it was Biden and the CIA director that realized that al-Zawahiri was right next to Abdul, living in a high-ranking Taliban house. So in other words, Abdul and the Taliban are still in bed with Al-Qaeda. And how dare Trump lay down in bed for the love of oil, for the love of Exxon and Chevron? How dare Trump as chief and commander lay down with Abdul and give refuge to the Taliban, knowing that the Taliban is tied at the hips as allies with Al-Qaeda? Trump should have never done that, but he's a venomous snake oil con artist of a Rockefeller fathered drifter of a chief and commander that was willing to desecrate the legacy of 9/11 just for him to profiteer off of it. That was willing to piss and shit in the eternal fountains of the victims of 9/11 because he wanted to make Exxon that much richer. And Chevron. And the only way he knew how to do it was to lay down with Abdul and the Taliban. Instead of, if they wanted to withdraw from Afghanistan, they should have withdrawn but left the coalition American-Afghan president in power, along with the Afghan coalition American Afghan government in power. But no, Trump decided to undermine them, to undermine the American coalition Afghan president, to undermine the American Afghan coalition government. Trump threw them underneath the bus and rolled out the red carpet with Mike Pompeo for Abdul and freed him out of prison and 5,000 of his soldiers. In true desecration of the victims of 9/11, this venomous snake oil con artist drifter of a con artist Rockefeller reincarnated bastard dared desecrate the victims by laying down with the people that caused 9/11 to happen. The Taliban and Al-Qaeda. Thanks to Biden, the CIA, soon as Biden was sworn into office, the CIA realized that Al-Assad Kharahiri, the leader of Al-Qaeda, was invited right back into the Taliban refuge to seek refuge in Afghanistan. And the CIA was able, under Biden, to track the Assad Kharahiri's whereabouts and assassinate him. But how dare Trump say that blames Biden for the fiasco of Afghanistan? That was Trump's greed as a venomous snake oil con artist that bit with venom the victims of 9/11. Remember the story that Trump says, "Let me in, O tender woman, let me in," where he utters the venomous snake story, where his con artist drifting like a Rockefeller's father reincarnated with his snake oil remedies for the love of profiteering of his special interests, of his lobbyists, for the love of oil and profits. The American president colluded with the Taliban, because Trump was so desperate that he only had a couple months in office remaining in his administration, that he was desperate to close the deal with India, to supply India with Russian Exxon Arctic energy of natural gas. So Trump laid down with the Taliban leaders to get them to promise that they won't terrorize or tamper with that pipeline. So Trump laid down with the people that attacked us directly in 9/11. It took 20 years of American soldiers dying in Afghanistan to prop up a coalition American Afghan government. And it only took Trump a couple months to undermine it all, and to lay down and collude with the leaders of the Taliban for the love of oil. Like a venomous con-arting drifter of a venomous snake that bit venom into the victims of 9/11.